people in Iran are in deep mourning. And I think the scenes that we will see tomorrow in Tehran, where millions of people will come to the streets, will again show that Western media propaganda is nonsense, and social media, which is very much controlled by big tech corporations in the United States that are closely affiliated to the government.
The tragic passing of former Iranian President Ebrahim Raisi and former Foreign Minister Hossein Abdollahian in the helicopter crash on May the 19th had the world in shock. What does this mean for Iran? During Raisi's presidency, Iran joined BRICS, joined Shanghai Cooperation Organization, formed closer ties with the Global South nations, and showed great determination to fight against imperialism. Will his passing change the global dynamic? Hello, everybody. Welcome to Talk It Out with me, Li Jingjing. Joining me today is Professor Seyed Mohammad Marandi. He is a professor of English literature and Orientalism at the University of Tehran. So, Professor Marandi, thank you so much for joining me today. Before we start our interview, I would like to express my deepest condolences to you and all the people in Iran for this tragic loss. And our President Xi Jinping also sent condolences to people in Iran. He said, President Raisi's unfortunate passing is a profound loss to Iranian people, and the Chinese people have lost a cherished friend. The Chinese government and people highly value the traditional friendship with Iran and believe that with a joint effort of both sides, the comprehensive strategic partnership between China and Iran will continue to grow from strength to strength. So this is a message from people in China to all the people in Iran. And thank you so much for joining us today. So first, can you tell us how are people in Iran responding to this tragic loss? What's the mood like in Iran?
Thank you for inviting me and for the condolences. And we're all grateful for our good friends in China who have given their condolences, your president, and all the friends of Iran in China. I'm grateful to them all. People in Iran are very upset. I was on campus yesterday. I had class. Students came up to me and were visibly upset about the situation. Right now, as we speak, there is an enormous funeral in the city of Tabriz in northwestern Iran, near where the helicopter crashed. Hundreds of thousands of people are on the streets in the funeral procession there. Then the bodies will be brought to the capital, Tehran, and you can imagine how huge the funeral will be in Tehran when you have such a massive funeral in Tabriz. So people are expressing their sorrow, but the country will move forward. We have a constitution which envisages for all such situations, and within 40 days from now, we will have elections within the framework of the constitution. The current first vice president will assume the president's responsibilities, and then in a roughly 40 days from now, when we have elections, the new president will be swiftly inaugurated so that there won't be any major problems with regards to the affairs of the country.
So when the rest of the team were still searching for the wreckage of the helicopter, we saw people go to the city center of Tehran, pray, gather together, hoping they will be safe. And after the death was confirmed, like you mentioned, there were funerals and people were mourning for the tragic death of their leaders. But even with those photos and footage, we see some media and some people on social networks are trying to cheer on the death, cheer on this tragedy. And some Iranian diaspora in other countries are also celebrating the death. I mean, how will you respond to such behavior? And what do you make of such narrative?
Well, Iran Iranians look upon this sort of behavior with disgust. And these are small groups of people in the West who are affiliated with Western governments. They are funded by the US State Department. They are funded by European Union governments. They have television channels and websites and online platforms that are funded by NATO states. So it is expected for them because they work for foreign governments. But I think the scenes in Tabriz today are very clear show very clearly where ordinary people stand, and that people in Iran are in deep mourning. And I think the scenes that we will see tomorrow in Tehran, where millions of people will come to the streets, will again show that Western media propaganda is nonsense, and social media, which is very much controlled by big tech corporations in the United States that are closely affiliated to the government, they will too, they will be exposed. So they cannot hide millions of people in Tehran, and they cannot hide the hundreds of thousands of people who are in Tabriz today. So, but the Western media, they never learn. They will continue with misinformation even after the funeral. And that's just how it is. Until the US empire completely collapses, they're not going to be able to acknowledge reality.
So what kind of impact it'll have on domestic politics? I think some people believe Raisi is the next supreme leader. So after his passing, will this bring some instabilities to politics domestically to Iran?
No, there was no talk in Iran of him being the next leader. That again is Western media propaganda. In fact, if President Raisi wanted to be leader, he wouldn't become president. He would stand in some more safe position, because the president has to do all the hard work. And you have to deal with inflation. You have to deal with people not having jobs. And obviously, the president is going to be criticized a lot. So why would he do such a thing? But this is, again, anything that comes from Western media when it comes to Iran, I would just ignore it. I would often assume that the opposite is true. But as I said earlier, the Constitution is clear. When the president dies, he is swiftly replaced through new elections. In fact, in the 1980s, Western-funded terrorists murdered a president in Iran and his prime minister. Back then, we didn't have a first vice president. In the older constitution, we had a vice president. We had a prime minister. These Western-backed terrorists, who are in the West as we speak, they have bases in Albania and other Western countries. When they murdered the president and the prime minister, the same thing happened. Immediately, the new elections were held, and we were at war, but still the state functioned, and we moved forward. So there's no concern. Iran is much stronger today than it has been in the last 300 years. And it is really the most important power in West Asia, and it is rising. And nothing in Iran is dependent on any single person.
So during Raisi's presidency, Iran joined BRICS, joined Shanghai Cooperation Organizations, formed much closer ties with countries like China, Russia, Latin America, these global South nations. President Raisi and Foreign Minister also visited China several times. I think you were with President Raisi's delegation in China as well. Iran and Saudi Arabia restored ties. Many historical moments took place during his presidency. And of course, he showed great determination to fight against imperialism, and Iran has been the most vocal voice in the world to stand up for Palestinians. So I'm wondering, after his passing, do you think these foreign policies of Iran will be changed?
I think there will be continuity. We are not going to move away from the current policies. Iran has invested a great deal in the convergence of Asia, and thus for Iran, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization is very important. Iran has invested a great deal in breaking the monopoly that the United States and Western countries have on financial institutions, thus Iran joining BRICS, and Iran is pushing for a multi-polar world, and we've seen that through its policies across the region and beyond. Iran has given staunch support for Venezuela, Cuba, Nicaragua. I accompanied the president's delegation when he visited there. The same was true when we visited your wonderful country. So that will continue. And Iran's policy of supporting the Palestinian people against this brutal genocide will continue. The new president, there is a consensus in Iran about these sort of things. So the new president, whoever he may be, he will have his own policies, he will have his own vision, but the principles, whether especially in foreign policy, will be very much in place. But depending on who's elected, we may have different economic policies. President Raisi was a person who was trying to focus on expanding the social welfare network. We'll have to see if the next president wants to move in the same direction or he's going to move in a somewhat different direction. That remains to be seen, because until after the funerals, there's not going to be any talk of politics, obviously. But when it comes to foreign policy, this is the path forward that everyone believes must continue, and everyone acknowledges in Iran that President Raisi was very successful in his foreign policy, and he had major achievements in foreign policy.
I would like to hear your thought on this, because many worried this will bring more instabilities to West Asia or Middle East in Western terms. So do you agree with this?
No, I don't believe that it will have any such impact. In fact, the huge ceremonies, the funeral ceremonies that we're seeing and that we're going to see, I think will show the strength of the Islamic Republic of Iran and the Iranian people. And it will show the international community, and especially Western audiences, that the fake narratives of Western media and Western governments simply have no credibility in the eyes of the world anymore. People will see that the Islamic Republic of Iran has a very high degree of legitimacy. And I think that will, in a sense, strengthen Iran's position, despite the great loss. But the fact that people are coming together in such a big way is itself a very strong symbol of strength.
So my last question is, can you share with us some of the stories, some of your observations when you're in China with the President Raisi's delegation? Can you share with us some of the inside stories?
Well, I'm not a government official, and they only ask me sometimes to take part in these foreign trips to deal with media. So I never worked with President Raisi. I would see him now and then on the plane and in the hotel or elsewhere during these trips. What I can say about him is that he is extremely humble. It's really amazing how humble this person is. If you did not know that he was the Iranian president, you would just think this is some ordinary person on the streets. And I find that very extraordinary. We sometimes, if we're given some small position, or if we have some success somewhere, we become arrogant very easily sometimes. But I found him extraordinarily humble, very kind to people, very patient with people, and it was a tremendous loss.
Thank you so much, Professor Marandi. I wish you and all the Iranian people continue to be strong and be brave I'm sure together we will make sure the world is much closer to multipolarity. So thank you so much for joining me today.
I wish the best for you and our good friends in China.